What's going on, everybody? It's Javon.ca here again for another episode of 100 Ways to Make 100K, where we're on the hunt to find 100 different ways to make 100 grand a month. In this episode, I want to introduce you to someone by the name of Mike Dunn from the store 1922. Now, I stumbled upon this store by accident, shopping for a friend. It's not often that you meet someone that was once so high up in corporate that left and started their own thing. So he's got a very interesting story. And if you're in corporate thinking about making that jump, I think you're going to get a lot of value from this episode. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to introduce you to Mike Dunn. So what's going on, man? How you doing?
Feeling good, man. Thanks for having me on the episode.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure chatting with you. What was your name?
My name is Mike Dunn from 1922, baby.
Mike, it's such a pleasure meeting you. Now, I got a question for you. Do you remember the first time that you made 100 grand in a year?
I do.
Okay,
yeah.
Man. You take us back to that time. What was going on in your life? Where were you? What were you doing? I'd love to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, very cool. Okay, so 1922 was founded and we opened in June 12th of 2022. So we've had the pleasure and the insanity to be able to have 100K a month. And we've made well over $1 million in a single year. So it's been pretty intense on either side.
So when was that month?
So the first month we hit, shit, man. Can I swear?
Yeah, okay. Man. Live your life. It's okay. Fuck yeah.
I mean, like the first time we hit it, October 2020, we were 4 months into operating here. And it's like we got shot out of a cannon. So basically we ended up making $147,000 in that month of October, which was insane. Subsequently in November and December, we also made 100K that month, and then COVID restrictions, lockdowns, everything else kind of came in and impacted the rest of it. But yeah, I had the opportunity to be able to do that 1 month. It was pretty crazy.
Dude, that must have been surreal.
Yeah, like we had to, so like, you got to remember, like when you're a new business and you hit the ground running that fast, cash flow is always the most pressing, because as you're growing, you don't necessarily have the cash to fund the future growth. So believe it or not, in a tale and a story. So we, this is early days. People were really looking to get into the industry, looking how to invest. And believe it or not, I needed 100K bad. I needed 100K just to throw into inventory to fulfill the demand that we were having, because like the curve we were going at was so aggressive. So a customer, believe it or not, came in the store. He said he went to 4 or 5 different locations. No, sorry, like 20 locations. Came in, our team was here. He spent $500, looked around, said, "This is dope. Give me the emails. Give me the email to the owner." So lo and behold, literally 20 minutes later, he emailed Brooke and I. Also hustling dude, entrepreneur, really successful guy. We had a meeting at Betty's, which is our local dive bar down the street. And basically we put a deal together in good faith on principle for 100K before legal paperwork, before anything. He cut us a check. We threw that immediately into inventory, and that funded basically the October, November, and December over 100K months that we had to be able to fulfill.
Interesting.
Yeah. So crazy. A customer of ours believed in the concept that much. He turned around and gave us 100K to fulfill the demand.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what were you doing before you opened the store? I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, good question. So I spent, I'd say, let's call it round up, let's say 13 years in telco. So Rogers for, let's call it 7 years, Bell for 7 years, both on the business to business and business to consumer markets, predominantly in wireless, in pricing, revenue, kind of operations, IT, sort of like core marketing functions.
Okay.
At Bell, when we were leaving, probably the portfolio was about $4.3 billion.
Wow.
That the team was managing. So yeah.
That's an interesting
big corporate background to coming into this.
So from big corporate to, I guess, like small, medium retail, big retail. Well, big retail.
I don't know
soon.
I wouldn't even know how to label it. Let's just call it your own hustle.
Yeah. So what made you want to leave corporate, right? Like being at something that seems so stable, one of the companies that have been around forever, to leave and want to open up your own thing. Like what made you want to do that?
Man, it's crazy. And I'd say anyone listening is probably in a similar situation potentially to me. I think for me personally, maybe that differs to other people, is I overachieved. I'd say I overachieved in my younger years, and I got thrown into a life I didn't necessarily know was going to happen. But when you're having success, you got job titles, you got money. I think that was a big motivation and driver to keep doing it and keep the hustle going. And then being great at what you do, getting poached by another company to solve their problems. I just turned 40 this year. It just kind of got to a place probably when I was like 35 of just feeling really unfulfilled. The money wasn't the motivation. The job title wasn't the motivation. And the problem to solve for had just become a little redundant, and it just wasn't as exciting anymore. So I was looking for vehicles and places where I could potentially go. And when I saw that the Ford administration was potentially going to open up cannabis retail to privatization, that really got my interest. So that was probably like 2016. So I started doing research, and my wife and partner, who's not in the frame right now, but she started to study the social problems. I started to study the business problems and just started modeling, man. Honestly, it just became an obsession and just started going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then, it became that moment of truth where it's like, I could keep going with what I'm doing, or I could bet on myself. So it became that moment of truth, man. So it's like, keep going with that traditional path, which was, fuck, man, it's the safe path, like the safest path. And if I were to put it in like literal words that people can probably relate to and grasp, it was like I was getting pushed to the middle. I was good, but I wasn't great, right? Like I'm making money, but I'm not rich. I'm not, like, you're just kind of, I got pushed into this middle spectrum, and where I thrive is in chaos. So I was looking for vehicles to get on the edges where things are a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I personally left like 12 years of institutional knowledge and success behind to bet on myself. And it's scary, man. It's terrifying. And everyone should feel that terrified.
Yeah. What were some of the things going through your head as like you made that transition out and actually started?
Oh man. Thoughts going through my head?
Yeah. I'd love to hear.
You got to remember, like, so Brooke and I chose to be bootstrapped to do this. I think there's two ways of doing this. You can either go raise a lot of money and have more people help you with a vision and how to execute, or you can choose to go down a path where you're going to self-fund, bootstrap, and that's the way we ended up doing it. So it was crazy, man. Like, you have to be the subject matter expert. You have to have a vision. You have to have everything in a row to be able to go do it. So the thoughts going through my head were fucking endless, bro. Like, you got to remember, I'm working a 90-hour career job, high intensity, 7 days a week, and doing this at the same time. So it's all been a blur. I really haven't had a second to breathe in 2.5 years. Let's call it 3 years. So, yeah, the thoughts were endless, bro. Well, they're still endless. It doesn't end. It's like a sickness.
Yeah. Holy smokes, man. So I guess we kind of skipped 100 in a year and kind of got straight into 100 in a month.
Sure.
Now, have you ever done 100 in a day?
No, I wish. That would be, I think those were early days in some of my peers. I think probably the first stores that were opened, the first 25 in the lottery probably had the novelty to be able to say that, but who knows in the future. But for me, I look at it more in the longer term. It's months, quarters, years to be able to get that versus make a fast dollar in a day. Understood.
So what were some of the lessons you think that you've kind of carried from corporate over to here? Or
I wouldn't necessarily say they're lessons. I'd say like we can make this really complicated, and it's really not. Like, business is just it's just creative problem solving and critical problem solving. So like, my mentality from, coming from Bell to this hasn't changed. How do you acquire? How do you upsell? How do you cross sell? How do you retain? And how do you make more money where there's opportunities? Like, the mindset hasn't changed for me. I've just switched how to sell an iPhone to an eighth.
Interesting.
So my philosophy, my approach to things haven't changed. My demeanor, and the way I've done it is the way that I want to do business, not in a stereotypical kind of like traditional way of like, suit, tie, tucked in shirt sort of vibe. But like, my mindset hasn't changed.
Interesting. So you narrowed it down to you said, how do you buy, how do you sell, cross sell, upsell?
Yeah.
Break that down for me for 1 sec.
Yeah. So I mean, like, generally with like, coming from a core marketing background, right? So I think this would dovetail in anyone that's been in sales, operations, IT. You would have elements of this, but effectively, like, how do you acquire a customer? So like, what are the mechanisms? What's the pricing strategy? How do you delight someone to convert them? Because I think that's what people necessarily don't understand about this business, that it's really a base. It's a monthly recurring. It's not necessarily McDonald's where it's machine gunning people in and out. I'd say probably 8 out of every 10 customers that come in the store are here once a week.
Oh, wow.
So the other 2 are acquisition. They could just be from the hood, or they come in and join that 8% and the ball starts to get a bit bigger. So it's, that's how you're acquiring. Upsell, cross-sell is the critical way of looking at it. So like if I know through data and through segmentation that you spend $20 every time you're in the shop, what's a product I can put in front of you to try to get $2 out of you? How do I get $5 out of you? What's the product value proposition? What's the consumer value proposition? Does that make sense? And can I constantly be taking people and moving them to places to try to solve the problems for the business? So it's pretty traditional. It just may not be said point blank period from a lot of people in these aspects, but upsell, cross-sell is huge.
Now we've seen stores, specifically retail, close down left, right, and center. But you're still here.
Yeah,
4
we're still
years
here,
with 40 more to go, right?
So I'd say that it's there's a lot of feelings on this, and there's a lot of water cooler talk. I try to be very unemotional about it and just try to be binary with the thinking. So I would look at retail, restaurants, probably bars as proof of concept, and that concept of how you want your space to look, feel, and the subsequent cost that comes with it. That's basically what you're looking at. And I think the 4 problems you're trying to solve for is can your concept generate revenue or like people through the door? In downtown Toronto specifically, you need to be making 35% margin to be able to survive, unless you got a shitload of revenue or people walking through the door. You need cheap rent and you need cheap people. Now, living in Toronto, to be a hustler and being in this business, we know cheap rent's not a thing. We know people aren't cheap to get. So really you're banking on velocity of how many people can come out the door. And how do you make as much money from that with being fair and not ripping people off? So it's a constant balance.
And what do you think, or not what do you think, but like if you were to describe your concept to some of the viewers, maybe they might want to try, how would you break that down?
Like our concept, I'll answer the question slightly different. So I'd say from the brand standpoint, look, if you're talking about concept, I think you really got to dig into what is the problem you're trying to solve. So there's going to be a social aspect and there's going to be a business aspect. So what Brooke and I did at the early days, where we were really pedantic about what are the problems that we think we're trying to solve for and reverse engineer to build a brand and a store around it. So really early days, it became wildly obvious of the social construction, the stigma. 1922, for anyone that doesn't know, represents the last year cannabis was legal before being criminalized. The first cannabis crime was actually in 1937. So you can just do the math on, it was legalized and stigmatized for no legal precedent until 14 to 15 years later. So there's the shame, there's the guilt, and then there's how people react to that. So it can be by gender, it can be by race, it can be by age. And how do you build an inclusive environment to try to solve for those problems? Now, I'm not saying we're right. We're just saying that was the problem that we looked at to try to solve for. That's why our concept is the concept it is. It's open windows, there's plants, it's welcoming. If your mom wouldn't come in and your lady wouldn't come in or your significant other, to us, that wasn't good enough. We wanted accessibility. So I'd say that's probably the brand's concept. And then from the literal sense, we chose to do small, quick serve and be in liberal, gentrifying, population dense places like we are in Old Town Toronto. So that was kind of broad strokes. Those were our concepts. And, we're competing against people that took the exact opposing side of that. They went major markets, $25,000, $30,000 rents, excess everywhere. And at the end of the day, we all get to a similar place, but it's more just the way of how you get it. But that's more of a them problem. We're focusing on us. But that was our concept, bro.
Interesting, man. And it seems to be working. So kudos to you.
We're just doing it our way, man.
Yeah.
I feel, while it's, we're talking about the glamorous parts of this biz right now, but I want to be clear to anyone watching this episode, it's not fucking easy. Every day is torture. Every day it's something, but at the end of the day, it's you get the way to solve the problem for yourself. So it's a blessing at the same time, but it doesn't come without its hardfalls, man, for sure. Definitely. But yeah, we're happy to be here. We're happy to be doing it. We don't necessarily see it. I think most people watching this, I think that's a key thing. I think, articulate to let you know, you're probably never going to see the success. You're never going to view it how other people would view it. I hope over time that becomes different. I feel like I'm a dude looking like my nose is against the wall and I'm not looking at this painting and I haven't had time to step back to see what we've created yet, just because we're so fucking in it. But I think that's a common problem with most people in situations like myself. But it's flattering to hear the recognition and the words from, our community, our base, winning awards, all that kind of shit.
Nice. So how would you define success? Especially
loaded question. That's a good one. I think that's, keeping the lights on, obviously. I think there's low bars for success, which is, being able to keep a business open and have a quality of life that's meaningful for Brooke and I. But I think more in the success for me is a little bigger than that. It's changing stigma. It's changing construction. Let's be brutally honest. Like, we're two white people working in an industry that's wrecked marginalized communities, that has a ton of baggage. Like, people can't have jobs because they have cannabis possession crimes. So like, we really take our platform seriously on how to like address those things through systematic change. And this isn't trying to sound noble or anything, but it's like, we did a collab with Ace Valley. I guess it would have been 2 summers ago. They funded the clothing. We did a campaign. It was called Natural High Society. We sold 250 pieces of between bucket hats, t-shirts, shorts. I can say in the links afterwards. But anyways, we donated, I can't remember off the top of my head. It was like a couple $1,000s. But what it did was, we worked with Cannabis Amnesty, who's a non-for-profit group that helps facilitate the legal paperwork for people to get the cannabis possession charges off their record. And we were able to get 6 people exonerated from their records. So, when I talk about success, it's keeping the lights on, it's the business. But for Brooke and I, it's a little more, it's bigger. It's a little bigger picture and broader of how to do more change than just be self-serving and make money for ourselves, if that makes sense.
No, 100%.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to sound noble or fucking high and mighty or anything like that, but that's kind of where our intentions lie.
Yeah, no, I respect that a lot, man, and I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
So, Mike, curious, if you were to go back, right, and talk to, like, let's say the corporate Mike behind the desk, suit and tie Mike, 4 point whatever billion under management Mike, right? Like, what type of conversation would you have with him? What do you think he would ask you? What do you think you would ask him? Like, what would the advice be? I'm curious, just like what the now Mike and that old Mike would have a conversation about.
Loaded question. I think for one, it's, when you're in infrastructure, like, look, if you work for a big company like Bell or Rogers, they're too big to fail. Like, they're designed not to fail. So, your contribution and your influence and your role and your org and what you do is important. But I think that the first thing would be no fucking ego. You think things, but you're looking very much from the outside looking in at things. For specifically to problems with like telco, yes, you have influence, but like when you're truly on the inside looking out, man, we've made a lot of mistakes, bro. For as much as gone right, we've made just as many mistakes. So I think that would be the pep talk probably to myself, was to be probably more humble. Listen, like, look, I've had investors, I've had my friends, I've had other people that I trust, for 2 years try to tell us things. And it's probably a blessing and a curse when you're so fixated on a problem, you think you know the answer on the journey to get it, and you're not willing to take in that information. I think that's probably the biggest thing is shut the fuck up and listen. Jeez. And really take into consideration what people ahead of you have done, so you're not repeating the same mistakes. But at the same time, as an adult, sometimes you got to scrape your knees for you to figure it out. So that'd probably be more what it's around, would be being a little more humble, a little more open, versus so fixated on the exact thing you wanted to do. But I think that's probably common to everyone. But definitely. That's probably the pep talk. Nothing like literal or too specific, more just be more humble, be more open, and especially on things you don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it just goes to a philosophy, right? Like, if you don't know things, what do? Do you pay someone, or do you man the fuck up and do it yourself? Jeez. Like, when you come into a corporate environment, like, it's designed for you to bring other people in to solve a problem, right? So it's like, hire this person, have this person work, pay some vendor to do this. And then you kind of like, that's the corporate mentality, right? Is like, you pay other people or you bring in other people to solve problems. Really what I'm trying to say is that philosophy is why my contemporaries have gone out of business, and why we're still here is we changed that philosophy pretty drastically and pretty hard I don't know when you put a time on it. Let's call it 12 months, maybe 8, 6 months. It's been pretty radical in the year, but it's become obvious. You got to be the subject matter expert. And if someone's around you or with you, they have to serve a certain purpose. Otherwise, you got to man up and do it yourself.
Jeez.
Like Instagram. I'm not fucking paying someone to do Instagram. Why can't I do a reel? Man up. Website. Why am I paying someone to do my website? Man up. So like, do I yearn to sit up for 48 hours straight watching YouTube tutorials on how to do Squarespace design things? No, but at the end of the day, it goes with the territory. So that's probably the more specific thing for your audience, is the literal, is like the philosophy of like needing people versus manning up and doing it yourself.
Beauty. Well, Mike, man, we appreciate you sharing your perspective. I think it's beautiful what you've created. And I think your story is very unique, and a lot of people will resonate with it.
That's dope, man. And I'm here, man. So I'm sure you'll put the links in the descriptions and all that stuff. If anyone wants to reach out, Brook and I are an open book, man. But yeah.
Yeah, where can they find you?
They can find, where can they find us? So on Instagram, I think we've lost so many Instagram pages. I think we're 1922_shop. And then 1922 retail. I mean, if you just Google it, we'll pop up for our website. We're everywhere, man. Just search 1922 Cannabis. We're around.
Beauty. We'll make sure we link you down below.
Yeah, get everyone there.
Thanks so much, man.
All right, man.
Appreciate
it.
Be great.
And that wraps up another episode of 100 Ways to Make 100K. Mike, thanks so much for being on the show. Once again, I'm your host, Javon.ca, and I will see you next week on our next episode. Peace.